by the end, you and I were doing sales calls together. And it wasn't me as the head of sales. It was, here is the thought team coming in to help you, Mr. or Mrs. Retailer, maximize your shelf space. And think of us as an external teammate that's going to help you bring thoughtfully designed products to your shelf. And we started looking at the shelf as if we were their buyer.
Alden, thank you so much for joining me today. Really excited to talk to you. Our friendship goes back a long time, having worked together at Perfect Fitness over 6 or 7 years. And what a journey we had and how wonderful it's been. I'm going to ask you to do a little intro about yourself, even though that's pretty well known out there in the world, but I thought it'd be great for everybody to hear that. Just as a quick intro to me, I'm Ian Coates-McCall. I'm the founder of ICM Studio, where I do consulting for different types of product development companies and manufacturers, and I'm a professor at the California College of the Arts. Alden, what should people know about your background?
Well, the first thing I want them to know is how thrilled I am to be on this podcast with you. And I want them to know that I couldn't have done what I did without you. You were my swim buddy. You were the yin to my yang. And anybody who's deciding to go out into the world of consumer products, I sure hope they have an Ian on their side. So I just want to throw that out there as we start. And that kind of dovetails into my background. As you had mentioned, I was a Navy SEAL. I had served for 7 years, then went to business school and had this idea about starting a company. And the company I wanted to do was something in consumer products. I wanted to create a product, bring it to market, and that product, I wanted it to be something that enhanced people's lives. The first 2 companies were absolute failures, but the third company is where you and I met, and that's where the magic really began. And everyone hears about the Perfect Pushup, and I will tell people, they're like, "Oh yeah, you were the overnight success," and I'm like, "No, we were the 10 years. It was 10 years to the overnight success," and from there, I ended up writing some books. I'm on the speaking circuit, and I like talking about helping people do something that they've never done before. And I talk about being unstoppable. So that's me in a nutshell. I'm also a father of 4 boys, 2 Labradors, and live in Northern California.
A crazy life. And I think what's cool about what you're doing right now is you continue to change people's lives at all levels, inspiring them. Also a coach for executives and others. I know you've given me a lot of valuable advice over time. So again, thank you for being together for this conversation. I thought one thing when I first joined you at Perfect, the company had started with something else. It started with a product called the Rev. And could you tell us a little bit about the Rev? I think what's interesting about it is you went through this whole sort of business development process. You created this software of this product, how it was used. You created the product itself. It raised money, had this whole thing going, and it just didn't quite take. It worked for many people, but it didn't work at the level you wanted. Can you tell that story a little bit? Because I think you found success out of the ashes of that to a certain extent.
My baby originally started off as a game controller, but the whole concept behind this was to create a medicine ball that was also a weight system, which was a center-loaded weight system. And you could put this in either hand and move it in all kinds of different directions. There's a lot of science behind it. I won't go into all those details, but I think the most important thing to understand about the Rev was that it represented a different kind of an idea. And I've now pulled apart a whole bunch of reflections on why we basically raised $1.5 million to learn $1,475,000 worth of ways not to launch this product. And why was that so hard? And why did it fail? Because it worked when we get it in the hands of people and we'd spend time with them. But the real issue around the Rev was that it was an invention. It didn't have a reference point. And as the product development team, we thought once we had built the Rev, all we needed to do was get it out there. People would understand its efficacy, and voila, we'd sell millions of copies. But in fact, we didn't have enough budget set aside for the education of this invention, of this thing that didn't have a reference point. And, that took me 4 years to figure out that that's what we were dealing with. And I talk about these eyes of an idea, and I'd like to call it out as 4 different eyes. There is the iteration of something, the improvement of something, the innovation of something, and the invention of something. And each one of those is a different product development path. And when I think of the 4 eyes, it was really you, Ian, that helped me categorize the different products that we had and looked at them with the different product development cycles involved. And once we had that structure, it became a lot more effective when you'd sit across from a buyer who has very little idea about product development schedules. And in the case of fitness, even has a limited view of what the product would do for you in the first place. They have a limited fitness understanding. And so those were 2 key roles that I felt once we had those understandings helped us be successful with our conversations with the buyers.
Yeah, I think I love the 4 eyes. That's great because it captures it well. I I tend to use 2 words. I use evolution versus revolution.
Mm.
And evolution has some reference point. Obviously it's evolving from something that people recognize and understand. A revolution is something totally different. And I think I think the Rev was a revolution, right? I don't think that's why you named it that, but it was a revolution. And you were doing 2 things that were very hard. You were inventing a completely new product and putting that together. And then you were inventing a completely different way to use that product, the hardware and the software. And you had to do both of those things and get that evangelized out there, which is a very difficult thing to do. And knowing you, it was probably, I just need to put more effort into this. I just need to put more effort into it. I'm not doing it like, let's go, let's keep pushing it. So you kept pushing on that. And I think, I love how you talk about raising money from all these investors and the relationships with them and what that meant. And then you're out of money. And then out of that comes this brainchild of something that was a little bit more of an evolution, which is the basic push-up, which everybody knows how to do. How did the perfect push-up come to be?
Well, these products, let me see. I didn't have this prop, but maybe I have this prop too. This is my original sketch diary that I brought with me when I would go on submarine deployments. When you go on a submarine deployment, a SEAL is really a guest on a submarine, and you want to stay out of people's way. And I really was looking for ways to keep myself mentally engaged when you're underway for 30 days underwater. And that was 1995. And I would just sketch for a couple of hours at a time.
And out of that sketching is where that idea originally came from?
That's exactly what happened. The sketching of these different ideas over time gave me the groundwork to look at the perfect push-up. And I remember doing the perfect push-up and going, this is so boring. This is not nearly as exciting as other design aspects of, sticking some kind of electronics inside, and we're going to work with a video game, and we're going to get all these metrics. And the original idea of the Perfect Pushup came about through SEAL Team, where we had been assigned a physical fitness instructor who's a specialist in exercise physiology. And he was talking about how to do exercises that mimic the natural movement of your body. And one of those was literally putting your knuckles on a towel on a smooth surface, like a waxed floor, and rotating through the push-up. And I looked at that, and I'm like, oh, there has to be a better way than doing this. And that was the original genesis for it. But that was 1995, right? We're looking at 2006. I'm staring down the barrel of bankruptcy. I've got less than $25,000 left. I've got probably about 90 days worth of cash left to pay benefits. That's all I could pay for a small 5-person team. And you remember at the time we were working with Steve Hauser, who is our product development mentor, kind of consultant. And he had been on the journey with the Rev for the last 4 years. And I asked him, would you do one more? And he begrudgingly is like, all right, that one won't be that hard. I can knock that out for you. And 87 days later, we had the Perfect Pushup.
That's great. And what I love about it is, yes, this, I think everybody can relate that if you put your hand out in front of you, it naturally wants to rotate as you're doing it, which is when you're doing a push-up. And so that marketing that you then came up with is like to show that and to show the punch and doing that, it seemed like that was a very understandable story for people, right? Push-ups, everybody knows that sort of, oh, my body, oh, that is the way my body behaves. That's funny. I never noticed that before, right? And then you had this sort of great marketing aspect behind it. Did you, I believe you sort of pulled out the credit card and did an advertisement in a magazine to get the word out there?
Yeah, I used my wife's credit cards. We did 3 tombstone advertisements in Men's Fitness, Men's Journal, and Outside Magazine. We had just enough to loan ourselves from a manufacturer 1 container of Perfect Pushups. And at the same time, we had pitched Harrington Catalog, which was a sharper image like product. And they did a magazine drop in September to see which products would be the ones they double up on or buy more inventory for the holiday season. And Perfect Pushup was their number 2 selling product. And they took the whole container.
That's great. That's great.
And that started it.
Yeah. Yeah. So what happened at that point? What was because here you are, you're a little bit out of money using your wife's credit card. You've got interest and demand. How did you take that to the next level?
We had originally raised money for the Rev with doing long form infomercials. Those are 30-minute infomercials. And the investors were excited about that because if an infomercial worked, it was a very high rate of return. So they looked at this like taking a bet and putting it on 19 red. The odds were almost about the same, 50-1. But if they worked, there were great returns. And we had a great infomercial team. It was very proven, but the challenge was we didn't have enough money and the product wasn't nearly adequate enough for a 30-minute infomercial on a push-up. And so we said, hey, we've got enough to do a 2-minute infomercial. And at that point, everybody in the world who is doing direct TV is like, no, you don't do that. You start with 30 minutes and then people get aware of it. And then you, over time, reduce to a 2-minute spot. And we're like, well, we're doing it differently because we don't have the money for that. And we started with a 2-minute and everyone, including my infomercial director, is like, I'll do it for you, but I'm just letting you know, I've never seen this work. And lo and behold, it worked.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. So it took off, you're taking the orders, your inventory is probably an issue at that point, trying to get inventory in from overseas to ship orders. So you had a direct to consumer going through the infomercial. When did you start taking it to retailers? What was the path to bring Perfect into retail?
The infomercial, short form infomercial launched in January of 2007, and it launched with $5,000. That's all we had. Again, using credit cards and using some of the proceeds that we received from Harrington Catalog and the direct sales we got from our 3 tombstone ads in the magazines. And from that 5,000, we got $20,000 in sales. And then we went to 7,500, and we just started every week slowly ramping it up, working with our manufacturer who had to loan us inventory because we didn't have a cash flow cycle yet that could pay for the inventory in advance. And the manufacturer was a key part of this. And he had been with us through the whole Rev days. So we had spent a lot of time building a relationship with him. And right around April, by that point, now we're spending $50,000 a week. And the word's starting to get out. We're starting to show up on the top 20, top 50 rankings. And some of the retailers were looking at this saying, hey, I'd like to hear about what we could do. That product's a little expensive. Could you make a less expensive variant? Now, ours went out at 2 payments in 1995, so we're selling it for, $39.90. And they wanted to have one in 1995. And there were some very hard and fast, tried and true pricing principles. 1995 was a very powerful one. 995, another one for short form. 39.95 was a little high because you do it in 2 payments. And the real focus was if you didn't get the second payment, were you whole on the first payment? Mm-hmm. And that was a key component of the pricing strategy. And as we looked at it, Walmart came in and was very aggressive early on and said, we want a 1995 and we want to do this as an exclusive ahead of schedule from everybody else. By the time we launched with Walmart, and so the idea there was we'd launch on December 3rd of 2007, we now have probably spent $1 million on TV. And there was great awareness of the Perfect Pushup by that point. We sprinted, we got a $20 variant of the Perfect Pushup out. And within 8 months, we had sold 1 million units of the $20 Perfect Pushup at Walmart by itself.
That's incredible. That's great. So that's when you first met Dave Breed at Walmart, and
yes,
who became very critical partner in a lot of what we did later. This is around the time that I joined the company, and it was it was a little bit crazy. It was like building the airplane as you were in the air, flying across the sky. I just remember the energy and the intensity. It was great. And I love that. I love that he brought the insight that it really at retail, okay, on infomercial, two $20 bills. Okay, I got that. I'm going to buy this. This thing looks great. But at retail, that customer might have one $20 bill in their pocket, right? And some change for the tax. And that was really the inflection point that gave you that 1 million unit volume to do it. I got to believe you were chasing inventory, and that was a real challenge for a smaller company, grown company to be playing with a Walmart at that point. So you hadn't gone to any smaller retailers besides Harrington's catalog. You hadn't gone to smaller retailers to kind of build up that capability. You were building that capability as you ran along.
Yeah, we did. And let me give you a little behind the scenes. Our relationship with Dave Breed did not start off on the right foot. We knew we needed another channel besides Walmart. Walmart would tell you, hey, we don't want to be more than 30% of your overall sales. And to do that meant we had to find some other retailers. And where were we going to find that kind of volume? And one of those retailers was Walgreens. And back then, Walgreens had a direct TV channel or shelf, an end cap, and they sold a lot of units. They had a lot of stores. And we had told the buyer, like, look, we'll sell this product to you, but you can't advertise it until December 10th because Walmart is advertising December 3rd. And what did Walgreens buyer do? They dropped on Black Friday. And that Breed called me up on Thanksgiving Day and basically read me the riot act. And he's like, what's this all about? I thought we had a deal. And so I just share that with everybody who's listening out there to really be cautious about when you decide to launch and go with a partner. We survived that. And, at the end of the day, Walgreens wasn't really a fitness partner. Walmart became the fitness partner. But that was a very early lesson learned with my conversations of retail, which I didn't have a lot of experience with at that point. The other key partner was Dick's Sporting Goods. And with Dick's Sporting Goods, what we needed to do was have channel diversification and launch the $39.95 product. And we really needed to keep them out of that. And they were a little upset that there was this product that was half the price, but then they saw the value differential. And the value differential really came down to the product development difference between the two. And there was enough of a difference that they got comfortable with it.
Yeah. So that channel differentiation, all of a sudden you're figuring that out and how important that is trying to keep everybody happy and offering different product lines to different retailers so that there's not that channel conflict going on. Great lesson. And I think later on, foreshadowing a little bit, in developing product, we would think about that channel conflict up front so that a line could be developed such that you had a similar product, but different models with different retailers and different channels of distribution. Oh,
right. But Ian, I really want to bring this point home. It was pretty easy for me to see that one. Okay, a $40 one and a $20 one. It got a lot more complicated. And that's where I really needed your help as the product design expert to help us look at retail from a different perspective. Because once you started adding multiple SKUs, different price points, different functionality, it wasn't 1 + 1 = 2. It became an exponential challenge to look at all the different feature function sets and price points. And you brought a template there. You brought a spreadsheet that helped us start to evaluate, hey, where can we make the differentiation and avoid the channel conflict? And that was science and art at the same time. And that was a steep learning curve for me.
Yeah. Well, it was great teamwork. And so foreshadowing that a little bit, as I share this slide here, this is around the time that I came and around the time I think that you were pivoting the company to think of it. I mean, when I arrived, the Perfect Pull-Up had just come out. Of course, there's a whole story around that one and the challenges that presented. The company was called Perfect Pushup at the time, right? Because that was the star of the show, right? That's what it was. And so we set about to build a broader based company, influencing more lives, changing people's lives for the better, helping them with their fitness goals, weight loss goals, health goals, et cetera. And so this is a little bit of the preview of where we were able to take it and into 2015.
Yeah. And I mean, you you just summarized years of work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And I know for some people that was actually Perfect Pushup by Body Rev, right? Because we were still going to go back to Body Rev when
Right.
you came along, and you were the one that's like, we really ought to think about a brand differentiation here and how this place is going to evolve. And you were asking questions like, so what kind of company are we? And you'd take me on long walks and be like, tell me what kind of company this is. What do we want to be? Where do we want to grow up? And you were setting this destination across a horizon that, was bouncing around in my brain, but I hadn't really formulated it. And that conversation led us to saying, hey, we're a healthcare company. And we're creating this thing called the Perfect Promise. That's, if you can take control of your body, you can take control of your life. And let's talk about how we can help different people take control of their life. And what were those different kinds of people? And then we created that target, the market differentiation with the avatars of, oh, this is the better triangle. And there are people that want to look better. And then there are people who want to feel better. And then there are people who want to perform better, right? And we broke those down into 9 different categories. Some of those categories we weren't going to play in, but each one of the look better, feel better, be betters had 3 categories inside of that. And through all that analysis, then we got to that slide, right?
Yeah.
That was 6 years of work that we
Yeah.
did together.
Yeah. Yeah.
To do that. And I don't want to shortchange the time that you spent asking the questions and making sure we were going to the same destination that this business was originally intended to in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think that's a really valuable piece of the equation, because once we had that articulated and we were sitting across from a David Breed at Walmart, or going to Tesco or Carrefour overseas, or Canadian Tire in Canada or in Australia, or Amazon, we could talk at a much more powerful level than other fitness widget companies that were just coming out with the next evolution of something.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think that that vision for where we were going to go, it's wonderful to see it afterwards, but that vision doesn't present itself in the beginning. That's very much of a process of listening to each other, of listening to the marketplace, because we had all these competitors that were coming in that had interesting widgets and interesting software about how to use their products. Think of like a TRX, I believe another Navy SEAL or Special Forces person.
Right. Another Navy SEAL.
And we had competition from an Iron Gym coming in there. And so there's this whole moving landscape. There's a conversation between us. There's a conversation with the awesome team that you would put together, trying to sort of figure out who we are. And as I often quote this, but as Dolly Parton said, figure out who you are and do it on purpose. Usually I use that to talk about individuals, but in this case, I think we were doing it as a company. It's like, who are we and where are we going? And we dwelled in that ambiguity for a while. And we're really able to sort of get through that ambiguity, talk about it, and then actually take action and move forward on things.
Thank you for bringing that point up, because it wasn't just being able to articulate it to your retail partner. It first and foremost was to articulate to all your teammates, and take a group of individuals to form a collective team that was its own persona. And I really think it activated the collective horsepower of everybody coming together, because by the end, we were bringing everybody together saying, hey, we're looking for some new ideas. And remember Valerie, who was my assistant and part-time bookkeeper, came up with a dog walking bottle with poop bag.
Yep.
And we sold 100,000 of those at Walmart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because her version of fitness was different than someone who's dropping down and doing push-ups and, ab wheels.
Yeah. Yeah. We're starting to understand who our customer is and the range of those customers and how to approach their different needs.
But not only that, Ian, it was inspiring everybody to believe that they too could have a good idea inside the company.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
I remember the very first time you said, hey, we're going to open up product development ideas to not just CCA interns, where you brought in some fabulous interns every summer and let them go wild on different ideas. But you also said, hey, let's get good ideas from everybody inside the team. And that will just help us build an even better camaraderie. And it did.
Yeah. Best idea wins.
Yeah. Best idea wins.
Best idea always wins. And we did some pretty dramatic pivots at times where there was a better idea. We were working on something and fully committed to it. And we pivoted. The next example, so I thought it'd be good to keep going through some examples here to sort of demonstrate some of this thinking that you're talking about. So when I came in originally, we had the Perfect Pull-Up, which is not shown here, but it was a product that had a lot of great benefits to it. We quickly, a company called Iron Gym came in and did this doorway gym, which had already been out there, which they put into infomercial and retail, and really was competing with us at a lower price point. And it took us a little while to sort of respond, right? We tried to make our product better and do that. And then finally we decided, well, why don't we take something that the market is accepting in this Iron Gym sort of metaphor and the way that works in the doorway, and let's build our own line around that and creating that. So fast forward several years, right? But we came up with this whole range of products, which I'm still very inspired by, because these are products that have to work great. They don't want to be installed. You don't want to drill holes if you're a renter. Even if you're not a renter, you don't want to drill holes in your wall to install something. You're trying to do all of these different things. We had to think about the supply chain with these products. They have to fit very tightly into a box. So it's a jigsaw puzzle. So you want to optimize that shipping containers as much as possible to do that. Have as many products on the shelf at retail as you can, but also be able to offer all these features and tell these stories. So what would you say about our multi-gym line and how that ended up creating that, and then the success associated with that?
The first thing I would say is I need to take responsibility for missing $100 million opportunity. And I became too emotionally connected. And this was something that was my growth throughout that process, because I was really emotionally connected to the Body Rev.
Yeah.
And then I finally had to let that go. And the only way I really let it go is saying, well, we'll come back to it. And then I got emotionally connected to the Perfect Pull-Up. And I'm like, well, ours is superior because of its functionality. But I wasn't paying attention to the fact and looking at it from a really cold, hard facts number that people wanted something simple that wouldn't destroy a door frame or, screw into a door frame. And I was adamant. And that was a mistake on my part. Like I missed that. I mean, we've since made up for it, but we lost the market share because of this 1995 multi-gem that I kind of lifted my nose up at.
Yeah.
And people just wanted, a keep it simple idea. That's the first thing. But once we started getting behind it, I mean, I love those products, right? The nuances and the detail. Yeah. And so did the retailers when they started to see what we were doing and basically doing it at a similar price point for the Iron Gym.
Yeah.
Hands down, we were superior.
Yeah.
Even the small things, like the tool being stuck inside.
Right, right, exactly. And I think that's where we started to, because and I don't, I, I won't give you that burden alone of not pivoting close enough. Like there's an expression in design called "kill your darlings," which I think comes from the 50s or something. But what it means is like don't get emotionally attached to your idea, and it's very easy to do that. And I think we attached to that origin. I was with you in that, and here was this 100 million opportunity, and we weren't going off of that, and the market was clearly telling us to go for that. And yeah, we held our noses up at that and said, well, that's not us. But eventually we did, and started getting in on it. So, but I think our secret sauce in this was both the supply chain, but bringing like a real design eye to it. One of my favorite products that we did was the Multi-Gym Elite here, which is the large one.
Yeah.
And
Beautiful.
it started with this like,
Still makes me smile when I see these pictures.
and it's the sinuous line, right? I'm drawing it again. I remember like drawing that line. I'm like, if we could do this, that would be really cool. And like that, it's like you may not notice these features of it, but for example, between where the metal comes together, we put these little rubber things, the cartilage of the knee. Instead of having metal on metal, we put cartilage in there for the cushioning of it. And these are doorway gems that flip up into pretty much any doorway. We by doing that and having it go over, we angled for the wide grip pull-ups. They were angled, right? So ergonomically better for the hand. When you spread your hands apart, they want to angle out a little bit, and doing that. The key for putting it all together snaps into the back of this plastic part here, which fits on the far side of the doorway for the tool storage, so there were all these kind of beautiful, subtle things which just made it better. How do you take a commodity product and do it better? And I think we started learning from that, that you could take a commodity, improve upon it, and then you could start to have different conversations with retailers as a result of that. Pivoting to...
It just makes me smile hearing you talk about it, because these were all the story elements that you and I would tell together at retailers. And I think it's also worth bringing up that by the end, you and I were doing sales calls together. And it wasn't me as the head of sales. It was, here is the thought team coming in to help you, Mr. or Mrs. Retailer, maximize your shelf space. And think of us as an external teammate that's going to help you bring thoughtfully designed products to your shelf. And we started looking at the shelf as if we were their buyer.
Yeah.
Right? We were like an assistant buyer for them. And when that happened, their wall, maybe their fear of, hey, we're just trying to maximize our profit and we don't really care about your profit, went away. And they started to lean into us.
Yeah.
And that is where we ended up having explosive growth in places like Walmart.
Yeah.
And going from a 1 foot strip to 8 feet of shelf space.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And I think that's where, we talk about this a lot, but merchant-centric design, where we're thinking about user needs, we're thinking about margin, we're thinking about price point, we're thinking about manufacturing, we're thinking about supply chain and how to deliver something effectively, we're thinking about how much products goes on a retailer can fit on a shelf. All of that came from you bringing me to those meetings and having those meetings start to be creative and listening. There's a lot of listening. There was sketching going on. They're kind of talking about where those needs were. And that's where, at least in my mind, it really crystallized. It's like, okay, if we think about a Dave Breed or another merchant, what are her needs? And if we design to meet their needs, then we are a better partner to them, and we have a better chance of helping them be successful, and they'll help us be successful. And that was a big aha for me. I hadn't thought of design. I haven't thought of design is designing for their needs as well before that. And it became, you're right, it became extremely effective for us.
Sometimes they didn't even know what their needs were. And we had to help them slow down and look at it from a different perspective. And when you did that, it opened their eyes to new ideas.
Yeah. You were able to sell products that we didn't even know how to manufacture yet at times. But
those are fun days.
It was fun. It was fun trying to find a manufacturer to make something that everybody said couldn't be done, but we did it. I'm going to come back to the idea of taking commodity products and rethinking them, because I think there were push-up stands out there before, but you rethought about it in terms of bringing a really meaningful functionality to that. The next one I'd love to discuss is the Ab Carver, the Perfect Ab Carver.
Mm.
And I think this is one that both you and I are very proud of, because
extremely.
We were hitting our stride at this point. Like we had started to figure it out, right? And just this product still, you look on, I didn't check this morning, but there's, I don't know how many reviews, 10 or 15,000. It's, 4.7 stars or something. The stories of it changing people's lives. I have my students, this is a real compliment to you and I, Alden, where I ask them to do competitive product analyses, and this ends up on their competitive product analysis.
Really?
And they don't even know that I had been involved in it with you. So it's great. But so here was this thing, and I remember being fairly young and my mom having one of these things, and it was kind of a wobbly wheel in the middle that looked like it came off a wagon with a handle that with a few screwdriver grips on it, and he'd push this thing out like it was, you'd get on your knees and roll this thing out, and then as kids we'd just collapse on the floor and start laughing, right? And so this was a great exercise, but that product had gotten cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and was a commodity out there and largely forgotten, right? And then I'm going to give you credit for this. You rethought what that product was. How did that come to be, and what led to this?
Ian, I have a surprise for you. And you've met Steve Hauser. God rest his soul. He died last year, and his niece came across some of the first prototypes and just dropped them off. And one of those prototypes was the first Ab Carver.
Huh. Look at that.
And he cut an old Body Rev up because, he was just like you. Hey, let's just look for a functional prototype and look at the handles and try and figure out what would be the right handles. So,
wow.
This needs to go in your shop, by the way.
That's great. I love it. Wow. I love that invention.
Yeah. So, but that was the invention of just trying to create something super simple right away to see the efficacy of it. But I will tell you, how we came up with this was really around the mantra of, okay, well, what does the body want? What's the best fit for the body? And one of the most important elements were those angled handles. If you know anything about exercise, and in our case, every salesperson had to become a certified fitness trainer. Now, they didn't have to go out and train anybody, but they had to have a fitness certification. And I had everybody go through NASM, National Academy of Sports Medicine. And when you learn that if your hands are like this, you're activating your supraspinatus, which is the top of your rotator cuff. But the moment we angle our handles, we activate the largest muscle in our arm, which is the tricep, and it gives us more stability. And so there were a series of those kind of moments that were like, this product needs to have these pieces to help somebody with the perfect promise of taking care of their body or taking control of their body. And it really started first with that. And then the second piece was helping people be more successful doing a very hard abdominal exercise.
Yep.
I mean, it's actually a dangerous exercise if you just have a free spinning wheel with a straight bar through it, which is what was created back, in the 1950s?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that brought us to the spring, that brought us to a wider wheel, that brought us, all these elements together. And during this time period, I want to call this one out because I thought it was brilliant of you. Warning labels became a really important element to all these products. We actually got sued for not having warning labels in the right places. Of course, people didn't know where to put a warning label on some of these things. They just slap them somewhere with no design thought whatsoever. And you had been watching NASCAR and looking at the Goodyear tires and some of the advertisement on the rim of the tire. And you're like, hey, Alden, let's make these like NASCAR wheels. And we'll make the warning label an aesthetic design that makes it even more exciting to use.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was
right. Well, I distinctly remember that conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's, this was, I think we'd gotten to the point where during the design process from the beginning, we were already thinking about where we wanted to end up. We wanted to end up probably doing an infomercial. That was still in the conversation that was going to be it. We wanted something, we knew exactly who our customer was here. Someone who wanted to build their guns, kind of, badass, not simply male, but people who really wanted a hard exercise in doing that. And so the whole notion, in the original, that wheel that was, that's kind of hard to balance, a hard exercise to do. First thing you came up with is like angle it and activate these other stronger muscles. Like, what a great idea. Well, you get out to the end of this thing and like getting back, it's like, okay, well, let's put a spring in it. Okay, well, all right, well, what's that going to look like? And how strong should it be? And should it be adjustable? And all these things. And like, okay, how are we going to do that? So we get into that. And then it's like, well, okay, resistance on the way out and assistance on the way back, right? So during the product development, we're thinking about the marketing and the messaging and trying that out. Right. I'm sure we didn't land on that right away, but we're already sort of trying out what's going to work in that infomercial, because we know Steve, the infomercial producer, is going to like lock us in a room and make us come up with these things later. And it was painful, and we wanted to get through that as early as possible. We were thinking about the stability. So it's like, well, all right, well, let's I think a rugby ball was discussed. We worked with Tyler Garland at Boom Bang, right? And it was like a rugby ball with some handles on it, or a buoy with a bumper from a boat with some handles on it. Okay, well okay, and then I can go obliquely. Okay, well, what's that? What's that called? And it's like, well, you and I are both skiers. It's like carving, right? It's a carving a turn, right? So, it's a carver. That's like, well, what am I activating? Oh, the abdominals. Oh, the ab carver. Okay, all right. So we're starting to get that, right? Okay, so it's flat in the middle, curved on the outside, make it look like a badass motorcycle wheel. And then the warning label, we had this lawyer that we were working with, and they're always like, you had to read the ASTM standards, like, yep, do that warning label and like slap it on, it's usually right on the
right. No, I remember you doing that right on the forehead.
Right there. And it's like, so it's like, okay, well, let's design the warning label at the same time. And so it's like, all right, let's do it like the IndyCar, stuff, or the NASCAR stuff. And he's like, you can't do that. I'm like going through the ASTM guide. It said, it does not say that it has to be straight. We're arguing back and forth.
Right.
Right. But that was that ambiguity that that process, right? The handles come off so that the box is smaller and we can get more in a shipping container. So we're thinking about the merchant. We're thinking about the how we're going to market it. We're thinking about the language around it. We're thinking about the benefit for the user, right? If you can take all of those different, intellectual property, if you take all those things and bring them together into a product, like it's a little bit of a miracle, right? It's a little bit, it's magical. And we were able to do that. We were able, I think we got to check most of the boxes that we were trying to in this project. And to see then bringing it back to those reviews, people's lives that have been changed and the appreciation that's out there in the product, that's good on us, brother. And our whole team. That was really a wonderful thing. Yeah. Yeah.
By the way, while you were talking, I looked it up. It's 14,953 reviews right now on Amazon, just on that one, right? And
Yeah.
and this was a product that, when did we launch it? It's like 2013, 2014? And
Yeah.
and we haven't changed anything. And I mean, we've since sold the company. Nothing's changed.
Yeah. 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 That's been great. Then there was a whole family of products that came out around it. So let's see. Gosh, there's so many things to talk about. As we transition into sort of, all right, well, where's the happy ending? How does it all finish up? Do you want to touch on walk run for a second, or
Oh yeah.
perfect sit? Yeah.
I mean, I think we got to talk about the smart armband.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to put that slide up. So as we're, here it is, companies growing. It was a small boat. There were some challenging valleys along the way. Equity, like there were times where, it felt like we weren't going to quite make it, as anybody who's been in a growing company knows. But we're trying to grow. We want to grow the number of SKUs that we have, to be impressive, ultimately for sale, right? And also to build a bigger company. So we started talking about walking and running, very different from the fitness equipment that we had been doing before, right? Not these physical muscle building things, but really thinking about that different customer base. So I'll share this slide here. How would you set this up?
I think the first thing that we had to grapple with was, originally Perfect was about the key pieces of tools that you would use for fundamental fitness exercises, push exercises and pull exercises and core exercises. And then it became very clear that as you start digging into the most used exercise modality in the world was walking.
Yep.
And here I am, Navy SEAL, thinking, oh no, we need the tough stuff, right? And by the way, the irony of a lot of these products that we were bringing out is they're hard. They're simple, but hard. And for a lot of people, they're not starting fitness doing push-ups and pull-ups or ab carvers. They're talking about going for a walk with their dog. And they're thinking about, how do I get 3,000 steps in a day? How can I stand for a little bit longer? And how do I get my mind taking off of that? And then we started, and Ian, this is where you would go into Walmart's and map out large accessory sections and start asking these questions when we meet with different buyers. Hey, how many armbands do you sell? How many pedometers are you selling? Tell us about lights. Like, why are lights important? And it turned out that, well, there are lights for bikes because people would bike. There were lights for walking because people had to get up early in the morning on the East Coast, and there were different time zones. And then we started looking at the same time, apps were starting to really come out. And people were using their phone more and more as their health tracker, right? The new idea of the iPhone wasn't just for email, or a smartphone wasn't just for email and for having conversations or for listening to music, that it was also a health device. And that took us a little while to make that switch to saying, wait a second, we need to start looking at things that incorporate this smartphone, because the smartphone is now becoming an essential piece of equipment. And that really enters in the conversation of the walk run line.
Yeah. 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 And we started getting into all sorts of areas that we hadn't explored before, the measured self with pedometers and simply counting steps for maybe those that didn't have a fancy phone at the time that could do that kind of thing. Just these simple pedometers, creating a whole line there with different features and price points, thinking very carefully about price points. Timers, for coaches and things like that. That again, we hadn't thought about, but really, really fun at this point. We're moving pretty rapidly, working with a lot of different manufacturers, exploring new materials. This sort of armband. How do you keep something, on your arm of different shapes and sizes so you can go through your exercise? So now we're thinking about cut and sew. We're thinking about molding silicone rubber, and how to get those on, how to do those. We're thinking about sort of wristbands with the Nike band had come out, and so we were trying to stay abreast of those activities as well.
Okay, Ian, I got to stop you here for a second, because you're not giving the smartphone armband enough credit, because that was a true, I guess it was an evolution, but it was a revolution when it came to armbands, because you went through and looked at and said, well, there are Galaxy arm phone bands, there are iPhone small ones, iPhone medium ones, iPhone large ones, and they must have had 10 different line items or SKUs with their own pegs of different cut and sew sizes. And you came back and were like, what if we had a one size fits all armband, and instead of 10 different pegs, you had 4, and then we had more shelf space to offer some more thoughtful products that help people achieve their fitness goals.
Yeah.
And that required an innovation.
Yeah.
And that's where this came out. And we sold hundreds of thousands of this product, because now it could fit any size. Walmart got the launch on it first, and it really was a revolutionary product for what it was.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great.
And I put that one squarely on you, Ian. You're the one that saw that and said, okay, we have an opportunity here. We've got to figure this out. And you brought in interns, and we did all kinds of mock-ups on this.
Yep. Yeah. Because I'll put it, I'll say thank you, but I'll also say it was a team effort. And Drew Walcott, one of our interns, had some stretchy thing, some swag thing that kind of stretched around a phone or something. And it's like, well, what's that thing? And he goes, oh, this is just, something I found. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. It can do this. It's great. And then Zach Goldberg-Pook, who was an employee, it might have been an intern, might have been an employee at that time. I can't remember. But anyway, he's like, oh, I think I know how to prototype that. So he built it in CAD and built a 3D model and started squirting it in. The first one's broke, and the second one broke, third one started working. And then it's like, well, wait a minute, this is pretty cool. So we started iterating and doing that. So really cool teamwork to, and that's the simple innovations are the fun ones, right? With the ones that seem obvious a little bit at the end. But it was great. It was a great process. So,
I agree with you. They seem obvious, but they're not obvious at the moment, right?
No.
And those are the beautiful ones, because when someone looks at it and goes, oh yeah, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because they know how it works like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And I love when he showed the package. I happen to have the same one here, but we had evolved the name of the company to Perfect, and there was a sort of a whole story about that, and with the dot at the end of it and what that meant. And it was no longer the Perfect Pushup Company; it was Perfect Fitness. In doing that, the packaging had been involved, where we really started this own this black and this the white and the black and the red, which was great. And Tommy Rainwater did such a fantastic job on so many of these different packages that could
Yep.
be extended out to other ones as well as other members of the team. Um, so we had gotten to the point where this vision, and again, I don't know if we knew we were heading for this vision, but this vision of wow, we started picking up. There's so many things in here. We just started picking it up. We started doing weight vests and getting into cut and sew and looking at best practices on the market and innovating and then bringing it to a price point that people could afford. We partnered with Trigger Point and started taking their premium products and finding a way to bring those to the mass market retail and doing that. Things like the perfect sit up and other accessories that help people be successful. It was really, it was kind of amazing a little bit to stand back and go, wow, this process that our team was following has yielded these results. And to see those results go into a larger format Walmart store and see 8 feet of product, right? I mean, I remember it took us a day just to set up for the meeting with Dave Bree.
Right. Right.
The 8 to 12 feet, but all the packages are there, all the pegs are there. We had to rent the modulars in the hotel conference room and put all this stuff up. And it was like, oh, Matt, wow. It was incredible what our process brought us to.
Yeah.
I'm
That
getting,
makes me smile.
yeah,
Those were fun times.
yeah, yeah,
And it was a total team effort. And that's what was so fun about it.
yeah. So the company gets sold. I'd like to, do you want to put a little cherry on the top of that and sort of talk about the exit, and then after that I'd like to transition to kind of lessons learned and how we might have done things differently knowing what we know today.
Yeah. I think, one of the reasons the company got sold was the original intent of the fundraising that I had done was really to be a marketing and design shop. It wasn't to do all the forklifts and warehousing. And because of our success, we really were starting to outgrow our 3PLs, our three third party providers. And we needed somebody that really had excellence, operational excellence in warehousing and shipping, because now 90% of my time was spent on something that I really wasn't that great at: managing inventory, EDI pipes to different um, vendors, and dealing with all the accounting and all the different costs associated with that. And so we sold to a company they have real operational excellence in North Carolina called Implus. They were also private equity backed. And you and I, a lot of these products ended up happening on that watch when we were there. And then they sold again, and we stayed with them until 2015. And I think it was at that point you and I both looked at each other and said, "Hey, this was a great run." They they really wanted to go, I think, in a different direction. You and I wanted to push into the electronics and go into some other exciting areas. But I think, regardless of that or not, we both wanted a break.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of effort there. And I think that was a joyous part for both of us, because you went to Amsterdam with your family and I went to Barcelona with ours, and we got to see each other and swap apartments and have another great experience, right? Well, we got to reset and reflect and start on the next journey.
Yeah, I agree. That was such a gift that we could both live in Europe for a year or two, and and see each other, but also reconnect with our families, or connect further with our families
Yeah.
after sort of the ride we'd been on. But what a ride that was, and the lessons that were learned from that. I think for everybody who was involved in the enterprise, were really such a gift, and such a growing experience. What what would knowing what you know now, you've mentioned a few things, but what would you do differently, and what would you advise others to do who are thinking about going on this journey? It's not for the faint of heart.
No, no, it's not for the faint of heart. But if you're the person that was like me, or perhaps like you, uh, who is attracted to the idea of turning an idea that's nothing more than something in the ether to a tangible product that actually has a positive impact on society, on a person, in the world, right? I think they were all of us have a little Don Quixote attitude of let's let's go after this. And I hope the people who are listening that you want that, be aware of things like what is the product? What's the problem it's solving? And and I always remembered when you would instruct the interns. And I loved sitting there listening to you basically be a professor in our office and say, okay, first stop. We're trying to solve this problem. And in this particular case would be the armband problem. Everyone go out to different places around the Bay Area where people are using their phones and observe. And you'd send them out for a day down at Chrissy Field or at gyms and be like, just observe, take notes, come back and tell us what you saw. Oh, some people had it in their hands or they had it on their arm, but they'd have to stop and they'd have to look at it. Was the phone upside down, right side up, right? All the observation pieces. And then from there, you started deciding and defining what's the problem we're really solving for. And I think that's very important because it's very easy to also get emotionally attached to your solution, but is that the right solution? And we've talked about this multiple times. Be careful of the emotion. The emotion is the ego. What we're really doing is trying to solve the problem for the customer.
Yeah.
And what is that problem? And then talking about the story of the solution and making sure that you understand the story because you're going to need to tell the story to the retailer, to the end customer. And do you know how to tell that story in a succinct, simple way? And when I mean succinct, we're talking 10 seconds or less.
Yeah.
Right? Like a punch.
Yep. Yep.
And when you start putting those pieces together, along with, so what's your brand? What does it stand for? Why do you exist? And you look at it from those elements, then you have a thoughtful approach and a shot at making your idea a success.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I agree. Products are narratives, right? I always I talk about how products are just props in the play, and the play has characters, it has scenery, it has context, and then at the very end, there's this interaction between characters, and the things they're using are the props in the play. And the prop in the play is only effective, it's only helpful, it's only meaningful if you understand the character and the context and the narrative that's there. So, so I completely agree with you that that's over the years, we got better at sort of that narrative, and we'd almost sometimes start with that narrative. And I think that's one of the lessons I take away, reflecting back on it now is can you, when starting product development on a product, it's so easy to get focused on the thing and the object and that thing that gives you the dopamine hit, right? The shape of it and what it does and the features and all that. But it's really, what is the meaningful narrative that's going to connect with the people who are ultimately going to be impacted by it and use it? What are their needs? What are their thoughts? How do you talk to them and give them something that they can really appreciate and help them connect with it? And to show, we haven't brought up the word care yet in this conversation, but show that you care about them, right? As you say, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And so,
Right.
and I think we brought, we brought care into the products and that thoughtfulness that made it meaningful to them, and then came up with these narratives that allowed them to understand that, even if they weren't familiar with it to begin with.
Well said, my friend. I could spend hours here with you.
I know. That's so, but maybe we'll do a part two. But thank you. Thank you so much, Alden, for your time. Thank you so much for your wisdom and inspiration, not just for me, but from the whole team. And I know everybody who gets into your orbit. It's such a gift to have traveled some miles with you and done all this. So, and again, thank you for your time today.
Well, the feeling's mutual, brother. Our friendship is a gift, and I learn so much from you every single time we're together. So I'm happy to be here as many times as we need to.